Hi, glad you're back with me. This is an original story from Hidden Revenge Family, and it took a turn you truly didn't see coming. Let's get into it.
I walked into my sister's engagement party wearing my old service dress jacket because it was the only thing in my closet that still fit me and still meant something. 12 years in Army logistics, 2 deployments, a clean record, a stack of commendations, and one civilian job offer that had vanished the week before. The Sterling family's estate sat on a hill like it had its own zip code. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, a string quartet playing songs no one was listening to. People laughed too loudly and hugged too long. Money always makes people act like they're in a commercial. Becca spotted me before I reached the bar. My little sister, perfect hair, perfect smile, perfect life funded by someone else's credit limit. Cassidy, she called out, waving like she'd just spotted a lost tourist. "You made it." She kissed my cheek. Her perfume was expensive and aggressive. I handed her a small gift bag. "Congratulations." She barely glanced at it before turning to the crowd around her. "Everyone, this is my sister Cassidy." A few polite smiles turned toward me. Becca lifted her champagne flute. She just got out of the army, and now she tilted her head pretending to search for the right word. In between opportunities, someone chuckled. Another person nodded like they understood something tragic. Becca continued, "She's staying with our parents right now. Bless her heart. Civilian life is hard when you don't really have transferable skills. Transferable skills. I had managed supply chains worth millions of dollars. I had kept battalions operational in places where Amazon didn't deliver. But sure, no skills." A tall man stepped forward. Julian Sterling, the groom, tailored suit, teeth that cost more than my first car. He shook my hand like he was testing the firmness of a mattress. "So you're the military sister," he said. "Must be nice to finally relax." "Relax," I smiled. "I'm looking for work." Julian laughed. "Well, if you ever need something simple, I'm sure we can find a spot for you. Our cleaning staff is always rotating." He said it like a joke. His eyes said it wasn't. Becca laughed louder than anyone. I excused myself and headed toward the bar. My resume folder was in my handbag. Printed copies, reference letters, interview notes. Old school, because some hiring managers still liked paper. I ordered a soda water and stared at the crowd. My parents were across the room, blending in with the decor. My father, Wallace, in a stiff suit. My mother, Karen, smiling like she was hosting a charity gala instead of watching one daughter humiliate the other. Becca reappeared at my side with 2 glasses of red wine. "I got you something," she said, handing me one. "I didn't ask for." She bumped her glass into mine. The red wine sloshed out, directly onto my handbag. Cold liquid soaked through the leather. I opened the bag fast, paper stained. Ink bleeding, reference letters now pink. My resume looked like a crime scene. Becca gasped. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." Her lips curled just slightly, not enough for anyone else to see. Enough for me. I pulled out the folder. Drips hit the marble floor. Becca leaned in and whispered, "Well, it's not like you have a career to worry about, right?" I stared at her, not shocked, not surprised, just taking the measurement of how far she was willing to go in front of an audience. A few guests noticed. The string quartet kept playing. Someone handed me a napkin. I wiped nothing. I walked toward my parents. My mother saw the wine stains first. "Cassidy, honey, it's just a bag." My father glanced at Becca, then at Julian, then back at me. He chose his words carefully like a man negotiating a ceasefire. "Let's not make a scene," he said. "It's an important night for your sister." I looked at my ruined paperwork, then at their faces. No one asked if I was okay. No one asked what those documents meant to me. No one apologized on her behalf. "Just don't make a scene." I closed the folder and slid it back into the bag. Wet paper squished under my fingers. I turned back toward the crowd. Julian was already laughing with his friends. Becca was back in the center, glowing under the chandelier, raising her glass again. I stood at the edge of the room like a background extra in my own family. And that's when a thought hit me, calm and sharp. They think I'm finished. Not struggling, not rebuilding, finished. I took a slow breath, straightened my jacket, and walked toward the exit. Behind me, someone called out, "Hey, Army girl, don't forget your drink." I didn't turn around. Outside, the night air was cool, quiet. No violins, no laughter, no perfume. Just me, a stained bag, and a sister who had decided my failure made her look better. I stood there for a moment staring back at the mansion's bright windows, and I wondered how many people listening right now have ever walked into a room where everyone decided who you were before you opened your mouth. Have you ever been treated like the disposable one in your own family, while someone else wore the spotlight that used to belong to both of you? Because if you have, then you know exactly what it feels like to walk away with your head high, and a plan forming that no one sees coming. I drove back to my parents' house with the stained handbag on the passenger seat. The smell of wine thickened the car, and my jaw locked so tight my teeth hurt. The house was quiet when I walked in. Same beige walls, same framed family photos, Becca in every picture center position, me in uniform, usually cropped at the edge like an afterthought. I went straight to the kitchen sink. I pulled out the ruined documents and laid them flat to dry. Resume, cover letters, interview notes, 5 companies, 5 rejection emails, all from the last 2 weeks. I opened my laptop and reread them. After careful consideration, while your background is impressive, we've decided to move forward with other candidates. At first, I'd blame the economy or my transition from military to civilian life. Or maybe I was rusty at interviews. That was the story I'd been telling myself to sleep at night. But now, after watching Becca smile while destroying my only tangible shot forward, the pattern felt different. Too clean, too consistent. The next morning I started calling. Company 1, polite HR assistant. Company 2, voicemail. Company 3, a recruiter who sounded uncomfortable the moment I introduced myself. Hi, this is Cassidy Hayes. I interviewed last week for the operations role. I wanted to ask if you could share any feedback on why I wasn't selected. Silence, then a careful inhale. I probably shouldn't say this, she said, but someone called us. A family member, said you'd been discharged for psychological instability, PTSD-related incidents, that you were unpredictable. My hand froze on the phone. That's not true, I said. I assumed she replied quietly. But we have a policy. If a close relative raises a concern like that, we flag it as a risk factor. I thanked her. Hung up, called the next company. Same story, different voice, same outcome. By noon, I had 5 confirmations. Someone, a family member, a concerned relative, warning them about my mental health, painting me as a liability. There was only one person in my family who benefited from me being dependent. Becca. I walked to my parents' living room. My mother was folding laundry. My father was reading the newspaper like nothing in the world ever changed. Did Becca call companies I applied to? I asked. My mother's hands stopped moving. My father folded his paper slowly. Too slowly. She was just trying to help, my mother said. By telling them I'm unstable, I asked. My father cleared his throat. She said it would be hard for you to adjust. She didn't want you overwhelmed. I laughed once. No humor, just disbelief. She told them I'm mentally unfit to work. Do you understand what that does to my record? To my future, my mother looked away. She was worried about you. I stepped closer. No, she was worried I'd get a job and stop being useful. My father stood up. Watch your tone. I stared at him. You watched her pour wine on my resume and told me not to make a scene. So let's not pretend tone matters in this house. No one answered. The truth sat between us, heavy and undeniable. Becca wanted me home, broke, available, someone to clean, someone to cook, someone to watch her dog when she traveled with Julian, someone who made her look generous when she posted online about supporting my struggling veteran sister. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. Becca. Hey, Cass, she said brightly. Just checking in. How's the job hunt? I let the silence stretch. Oh, she added. By the way, Mom said you're still staying there. That's great. Actually, Julian and I were talking. When we get married, we'll need someone responsible to help with the house. You could stay with us. Free room, free food. You'd just help out a little. Help out a little. I pictured myself in a maid's uniform carrying trays past her influencer brunch table. I'll think about it, I said. Perfect, she replied. I knew you'd come around. She hung up before I could answer. That night, I sat on my childhood bed and opened my laptop again. I searched my name online. Clean, no scandals, no incidents. 12 years of service, honorably discharged, leadership awards. None of that mattered if my own family was rewriting the narrative behind my back. I drafted an email to every company explaining the situation. I deleted it. It would look defensive, desperate, risky. I needed facts, proof, a way to corner this cleanly. So I did what I'd always done in the army when something didn't add up. I started collecting information, call logs, email timestamps, dates of rejection, times Becca had just been checking in, patterns. And the more I looked, the clearer it became. This wasn't impulse cruelty, it was planned, executed, strategic. My little sister hadn't just embarrassed me at a party. She had taken control of my professional future. And she'd done it with a smile, a phone, and a story about a broken veteran who needed saving. I closed my laptop and leaned back against the wall. For the first time since leaving the service, I felt something familiar settle in. Not anger, focus. Mission parameters were forming, targets were identifiable, and I had nothing left to lose by playing along for now. So I sent Becca a text. About helping at your place after the wedding. Let's talk details soon. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared, then yay. So proud of you, sis. I turned off the phone and placed it face down on the bed. In this family, silence was obedience. And for the moment, I could be very obedient. I woke up the next morning and made breakfast for my parents like nothing had happened. Eggs, toast, coffee, routine, predictable, safe. My mother smiled like everything was normal. My father read his paper again. No one mentioned the phone calls. No one mentioned the lies. We all played our assigned roles. In this house, silence was not peace. It was policy. I washed the dishes, dried my hands, checked my phone, 1 missed call, unknown number. I listened to the voicemail. Captain Hayes, this is General Harrison, retired. Please return my call when you're able. I hadn't heard that voice in years. Deep, steady, the kind of voice that made rooms straighten their posture. I stepped outside to the back porch and called him back. Sir, this is Cassidy Hayes. Cassidy, he said. I heard you're back in Seattle. Yes, sir, I'm adjusting. Good. I'll get to the point. Something came across my desk that belongs in your hands, not in the hands of your family. My grip tightened on the phone. Do you remember your grandfather, Silas Hayes? Barely, I said. He died when I was a kid. Yes. He also happened to be one of the original founders of Vanguard Logistics. I blinked. Vanguard Logistics, a national freight and transport corporation. I'd studied their supply chain model in officer training. Efficient, aggressive, profitable. I don't understand, I said. Silas left shares of Vanguard in a trust. Your parents were appointed temporary guardians because you were a minor. The trust stipulated the controlling shares would transfer to you upon honorable discharge from service. I stared at the yard, my father's prized rose bushes, my mother's bird feeder. Everything suddenly looked like a stage set. Sir, my parents told me Grandpa left nothing. They said the company bought out his shares. Your parents lied. Harrison said simply, the shares were never sold. The trust still exists, and legally those shares are yours. I felt no cinematic shock, no gasping moment, just a quiet recalibration in my brain. How many shares, I asked. Enough to hold controlling interest. 51%. Controlling interest. That meant ownership, direction, authority. That meant Vanguard Logistics answered to me, Harrison continued. I didn't know if you were aware, but I recently learned certain parties are attempting to acquire Vanguard through a merger. One of them is Sterling Capital, Julian's company, the same Julian who had offered me a cleaning job, the same Julian whose family now treated me like leftover furniture. I leaned against the porch railing. Why tell me this now, I asked. Because your grandfather respected service. He designed the trust so no one could touch it until you finished your duty. You've done that. The company is yours. What you choose to do with it is your call. But I won't watch someone steal what he built while you're kept in the dark. A car passed on the street. Somewhere a dog barked. Life continued, unaware that my position in it had just shifted. What do I need to do, I asked. I'll send you contact information for the trust's legal counsel. They've been waiting years for your signature. We ended the call. I stayed on the porch for a long moment, no dramatic music, no tears. Just a simple fact settling into place. I wasn't broke, I wasn't dependent, I wasn't powerless, I was uninformed by design. I walked back into the house. My mother was wiping the counter. My father was still reading the newspaper. I looked at them differently now, not as parents, as people who had managed my life like a file in a locked cabinet. They hadn't just watched Becca sabotage me. They had hidden a corporation from me. I poured myself another cup of coffee and sat at the table. No accusations, no confrontation, Not yet. I needed clarity before action, so I asked casually, "Hey." Random question. Did Grandpa Silas own part of Vanguard Logistics? My mother froze mid-wipe. My father lowered the newspaper slowly. "That's ancient history," he said. "I was just curious," I replied. I read an article about Vanguard's growth. It mentioned one of the founders was Silas Hayes. My mother smiled too quickly. "He sold his shares long ago. There was nothing left." I nodded. "Got it. Lie confirmed. Direct. Calm. Rehearsed." I finished my coffee, stood up, washed my cup, played the role of obedient daughter who asked a harmless question. In the afternoon, I took my laptop to the public library, neutral ground, free Wi-Fi, no family eyes. I emailed the law firm Harrison had sent. Within 20 minutes, I got a reply. "Ms. Hayes, we've been waiting for your contact. The trust is intact. Your grandfather's conditions have been satisfied. You are the majority shareholder of Vanguard Logistics. We can proceed with identity verification and transfer of control at your convenience." I read the message twice, then a third time. I closed the laptop and leaned back in the chair. My parents had built their lives on a house they were struggling to keep. Becca had built hers on appearances and proximity to wealth. Julian was building his on acquisitions and debt-fueled expansion. And under all of it sat a company quietly waiting for me to show up. I walked out of the library into the gray Seattle afternoon. People hurried past me carrying coffee cups, backpacks, briefcases. Everyone headed somewhere important. For the first time since leaving the army, I didn't feel like I was chasing stability. Stability had been sitting in a trust fund, collecting dividends, while my family decided I was a burden. My phone buzzed. "Becca, hey sis, Julian and I just booked a trip to Cabo after the wedding. You'll love staying at the house while we're gone. We'll talk details soon." I smiled slightly. She thought she had me cornered. She thought I was one missed paycheck away from obedience. She thought the story was already written. I typed back. "Sounds good. Let me know when you want me to come by and help." Then I slipped the phone into my pocket and kept walking. No rush, no drama, just a quiet shift in power that no one in my family had noticed yet. And I intended to keep it that way for a little longer. I leaned fully into the role they'd written for me. 2 days later, I stood in front of a gated mansion on the north side of the city, holding a duffel bag and my stained handbag. Becca had kindly arranged for me to move in early to get settled before the wedding. The house was rented, not owned. New money style. Too much glass, too many white surfaces. Nothing built to last. Becca opened the door in silk pajamas at noon. "There she is," she sang, my favorite live-in support system. She hugged me like we were best friends. Her nails dug into my back just enough to remind me who she thought was in charge. She gave me the tour. Guest room in the basement, tiny window, no lock on the door. "The maid comes twice a week," she said. But between us, I fired the last one. She had attitude. "So you'll just handle day to day. Simple stuff." I nodded. Calm face, neutral tone. No reaction, no resistance. Gray rock. If she wanted obedience, I could look obedient. By evening, Becca was filming a skincare video in the living room. Ring light, phone tripod. Fake laugh, fake sincerity. I cleaned the kitchen quietly like background noise. After she went to bed, I unpacked. Not clothes, equipment, small motion-activated cameras, voice recorders, door sensors. Nothing illegal, nothing fancy. Just commercially available devices anyone could order online. I'd planned logistics operations in war zones. Setting up a few cameras in a mansion was easy. I placed one near the front door, one in the living room bookshelf, one in the hallway outside my room, one near Becca's office desk. I labeled every feed on my laptop. Timestamps, storage backups, clean and organized, not for revenge, for documentation. The next week I became invisible. I made coffee, I cooked meals, I cleaned counters, I fed Becca's dog. I nodded when she spoke. I kept my tone flat and agreeable. No opinions, no pushback, no emotion. She loved it. One afternoon I overheard her on a call in the office. The audio came through my laptop feed. "Yes, the loan is under Cassidy Hayes," Becca said. "She's family," she agreed. Pause. "No, she doesn't need to be present. I handle her finances." Another pause. "Yes, same social, same address." My fingers stilled on the keyboard. "Loan. In my name." I rewound. Listened again. Took notes. Later that night, she came home with 3 shopping bags from a luxury boutique. She tossed one at me. "Hold this while I try things on." Inside the bag was a receipt. $14,870, paid with funds from a new account, under my name. Over the next few days, the pattern became clear. Short-term loans, high interest, fast approval, all under Cassidy Hayes. All signed digitally, all traced to devices Becca used. She was stacking debt in my identity. When the payments came due, she planned to shrug and say her unstable veteran sister had done it. I copied every file, every timestamp, every IP address. Then Julian entered the picture. He visited often, always after business hours, always carrying stress like cologne. One night they sat in the living room drinking whiskey. I stayed in the kitchen quiet, listening through my feed. Julian loosened his tie. "Once we're married, your sister needs to go," he said. Becca sighed. "She'll be useful." Julian shook his head. "No. She's a liability. You told everyone she's unstable. If she snaps, it's on us." Becca smirked. "She won't snap. She's obedient." Julian leaned back. "After the wedding, I'll have my attorney arrange a placement. Cheap assisted living, somewhere quiet. We'll say it's for her well-being. With her history, no one will question it." My jaw stayed relaxed, my breathing steady. Inside, another note filed itself cleanly into place. They weren't just sabotaging my career. They were planning to remove me from public life completely. Julian continued. "And once she's settled, we'll handle whatever small inheritance she has left. Your parents are already on board. They need the cash." Becca laughed. "Mom cried a little, but she'll take the deal. She always does." I watched them clink glasses on the screen. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just 2 people casually planning to erase someone who lived in the same house. I saved the file, backed it up, encrypted it, uploaded a copy to cloud storage under a neutral name. Then I closed the laptop and went upstairs with a tray of tea. Becca looked up. "Oh my God, you're a lifesaver," she said. Julian smiled at me. "See, perfect arrangement." I placed the tray down. "Anything else you need?" I asked. Becca waved me off. "Nope. Go relax." I returned to the basement room, sat on the bed. No shaking hands, no spiraling thoughts, just a situation map. Identity theft, financial fraud, conspiracy to commit unlawful institutionalization, multiple witnesses, digital records, and 2 people who believed I was too broken to notice. The next morning, I received a notification. Another loan approval, another 5 figures, another signature bearing my name. I saved it, went upstairs, made breakfast, and smiled politely when Becca said, "You're really thriving here, Cass." I kept smiling and washing dishes, while my other life quietly came online. The law firm verified my identity within 48 hours. Video call, security questions, digital signatures, no ceremony, no fireworks, just paperwork moving across screens. At the end of the call, the senior partner adjusted his glasses. "Ms. Hayes, you now hold controlling interest in Vanguard Logistics. The board is prepared to follow your direction. How would you like to proceed?" I had already decided. "I want temporary executive authority under an alternate professional identity," I said. "I don't want my name appearing in public filings yet." He didn't look surprised. Wealthy families did stranger things. "Understood. We can register an executive appointment under a corporate alias. Many high-level acquisitions use confidentiality structures." "Name?" he asked. "Viper. A nickname from my service days. Short, sharp, forgettable. By the end of the week, Viper existed on paper. Executive clearance, CEO appointment authority, board voting rights, secure office access." Meanwhile, Cassidy Hayes was still scrubbing countertops in a mansion basement. Monday morning, I put on plain black slacks, a gray t-shirt, and sneakers. No makeup, hair tied back. I told Becca I was going to the grocery store. She waved from the couch. "Don't forget almond milk, and use my card." I walked out carrying her shopping bag. I didn't go to the grocery store. I drove downtown to Vanguard Logistics headquarters. The building was steel and glass 40 stories high, reflecting the cloudy Seattle sky. Employees moved through the lobby with ID badges and coffee cups, minds already in meetings. I entered through the service entrance the way cleaning crews did. No one questioned me. Uniforms create invisibility. I signed in as temporary maintenance support. A board security guard handed me a visitor badge. I walked into the lobby holding a mop bucket. No one looked twice. Upstairs, the executive floor waited for Viper. Down here, Cassidy blended into the marble. By 10 a.m., Julian Sterling's representative arrived. I knew because I had the internal meeting schedule pulled up on my phone. Sterling Capital, preliminary due diligence session, conference room 38B. I mopped the lobby slowly. A group entered through the revolving door. Julian in front, navy suit, white shirt, perfect tie. 2 associates behind him. A lawyer trailing with a leather portfolio. Julian spotted me near the reception desk. He paused, looked, smirked. "Well, look who leveled up," he said, loud enough for his associates to hear. I kept mopping. He stepped closer. "Cassidy," he said. "Didn't expect to see you here." I straightened slightly. Neutral face, quiet voice. "I work here." His laugh came quick, sharp. "Of course you do. I guess Becca was right. You always land on your feet." He gestured at the mop. "Literally." His associates chuckled politely. One avoided eye contact. The lawyer looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Julian leaned in slightly. "This," he said, "is exactly why discipline matters. Some people lead companies, some people clean them." I nodded once. "Yes, sir." That satisfied him. He patted my shoulder like I was a loyal dog. "Good luck, Cassidy. Keep hustling." He walked toward the elevator's confidence intact, unaware that the person approving his entire company's future sat 10 floors above him under another name. I returned to the service elevator and rode it up. On the 38th floor, a receptionist greeted me immediately. "Good morning, Ms. Viper. The board is waiting." I stepped into a private office with a view of the city. A long conference table, leather chairs, water pitchers, notepads with the Vanguard logo. 7 board members stood as I entered. Respectful, professional. "Ms. Viper," the chairman said, "we're ready to begin Sterling Capital's due diligence review at your direction." I sat at the head of the table. "Let's proceed," I said. On the screen, financial reports appeared. Acquisition terms, proposed valuation, debt schedules, cash flow forecasts. Sterling Capital was asking for a lifeline. Their debt ratio was high, their liquidity was thin, their proposed merger depended entirely on Vanguard absorbing their liabilities, and someone had approved preliminary talks without realizing who held the voting power. I scanned the documents with calm precision. Military logistics had taught me to read supply chain charts under rocket fire. Corporate finance charts under air conditioning were easier. One board member leaned in. "Sterling Capital's CEO is Julian Sterling," he said. "We've scheduled direct negotiations this afternoon." "I'm aware," I replied. No one questioned my calm. At noon, Julian entered the conference room upstairs. This time, I was seated at the table when he walked in. He didn't recognize me immediately. Different clothes, hair styled differently, posture straight, badge on the table reading VIPER. Chief Executive Officer, Vanguard Logistics. Julian froze, just for half a second. Then his professional smile returned. "Ms. Viper," he said, extending his hand. "Pleasure to finally meet." I shook his hand firmly. "Mr. Sterling." He studied my face. Searching memory, searching context. He didn't find Cassidy the cleaner, because Cassidy had been invisible. Viper was not. We sat. Lawyers opened files, assistants poured water. The room settled into corporate rhythm. Julian began his pitch. "Sterling Capital offers an exceptional opportunity for mutual growth," he said. "We believe this merger will position both our companies for global dominance." I let him speak, observed, collected, every sentence polished, every number optimistic, every projection dependent on Vanguard's stability. After 20 minutes, I asked a single question. "Mr. Sterling, could you clarify your personal authorization on recent debt instruments listed under auxiliary subsidiaries?" His lawyer blinked. Julian smiled. "Those are standard short-term facilities." "Under whose name?" I asked. He hesitated. "Just a fraction." The board noticed. The meeting continued, but something had shifted. Julian had walked into a room expecting an easy victory. Instead, he sat across from a woman he didn't recognize, controlling a company he thought he could swallow, asking questions he didn't want asked. And downstairs in a locked janitor's closet, a mop bucket sat beside a visitor badge that read, "Cassidy Hayes." Unused, forgotten, exactly where I wanted it. I walked back into Becca's mansion that evening carrying grocery bags, just like the obedient basement sister she believed she owned. She didn't look up from her phone. "You're late," she said. "Put the ice cream in the freezer." I did exactly that. No rush, no tension. Just another task completed. After dinner, she went upstairs to edit videos. Julian didn't come by that night, which gave me quiet hours and a full data pipeline. I opened my laptop, logged into Vanguard's secure executive portal. A forensic audit toolkit sat waiting licensed to the CEO's account. I wasn't looking for curiosity. I was looking for confirmation. Sterling Capital's financial records were now accessible to me, under due diligence authority. Every subsidiary, every offshore account, every transaction large enough to require internal sign-off. I filtered by irregular cash outflows, then by payment routing to foreign gaming hubs. Macau appeared 3 times in the first report, then 7, then 23. Large transfers, late hours, shell corporations, circular movement, debt masking. Julian Sterling wasn't just running a stressed company, he was bleeding it. I pulled one transaction chain onto the screen, followed it step by step. Funds left Sterling Capital, passed through a marketing subsidiary, moved to an influencer agency, then exited to a private casino credit network, an influencer agency. I searched the agency name, Becca's management company, her influencer contracts, her brand deals, her consulting fees, all receiving money from Sterling Capital, all sending money onward. She wasn't just ruining my career, she was laundering his gambling debt. I copied the entire chain, saved it, time-stamped, locked. Then I opened the camera feeds from the house. Becca sat at her desk, headphones and talking to someone on speaker. He said the Macau balance is getting out of hand, she said. But don't worry, once the merger happens, it disappears into Vanguard's books. That's the whole point. Pause. I know, Julian, I know. Just keep your temper under control until after the wedding. Another pause. Yes, my sister is under control. She does what she's told. I watched her click send on an email. I zoomed in. The recipient line showed a Sterling Capital finance officer. The subject line read, Resmoothing Q3 obligations. I saved that too. Midnight passed. I kept working. Another folder caught my eye. Legal correspondence. Attached PDFs. Scanned contracts. One file name stood out. Hayes Family Agreement. I opened it. Typed signatures. My mother, my father, Julian Sterling. A 3-party agreement. Terms. In exchange for a lump sum payment, Wallace and Karen Hayes agreed to support the long-term institutional placement of Cassidy Hayes, under medical recommendation granting Julian Sterling and Becca Hayes decision authority over her care. I read it twice, no dramatics, no shaky hands, just a clear understanding of the kind of people I was dealing with. My parents had signed off on my removal, on paper, for cash, to save their house. I copied the file, saved it in 3 locations. Then I closed the laptop and sat still in the dark. No music swelling. No tears, no rage pacing, just facts lining up cleanly. Becca had destroyed my career prospects. She was stacking debt in my name. She was laundering Julian's gambling losses. My parents had agreed to have me committed. Julian planned to dispose of me after the wedding, and all of them believed I was docile, broke, and isolated. I checked the time, 2:17 a.m. I lay down on the bed, hands behind my head staring at the ceiling. The situation was no longer emotional. It was procedural, evidence collected, motives confirmed, financial leverage identified, legal violations documented. In the Army, we called this stage mission Clarity. The next morning, Becca knocked on my door. Cass, she said through the thin wood, I need you to run an errand today. Julian's suit needs picking up. Don't forget the card is in my purse. I opened the door. Yes, Becca. She smiled. You're a lifesaver. I nodded. Took the purse, left the house, and instead of heading to the tailor, I drove to Vanguard headquarters. Upstairs, the board was already waiting. I placed a folder on the conference table. Inside were printed transaction chains, email screenshots, contract copies, audit summaries. One board member flipped through the pages slowly. Another adjusted his glasses. The chairman looked at me carefully. Ms. Viper, he said, are you informing us that Sterling Capital's leadership is engaged in financial fraud and money laundering? I folded my hands. Yes, I said. And I am recommending we terminate merger discussions immediately and prepare legal action. No one argued, no one hesitated. When power speaks in evidence instead of emotion, people listen. By the time I walked out of the building, legal teams were already drafting notices. Compliance officers were locking data rooms. Sterling Capital's access to Vanguard systems had been suspended. Across the city, Julian Sterling still believed he was days away from becoming a billionaire by marriage and merger. At the mansion, Becca still believed her sister was a dependent assistant waiting for instructions, and my parents still believed they had secured their future by selling mine. I returned to the house with the tailor's receipt in hand. Becca barely looked up when I placed it on the counter. "You're really reliable," she said. "I knew you'd find your place eventually." I smiled politely, because in this house, the quiet one was always underestimated, and I had no intention of correcting that assumption yet. I woke up before dawn and folded the maid uniform neatly on the bed. For the first time since moving into Becca's house, I didn't put it on. Instead, I opened the closet door and pulled out a garment bag I had hidden behind winter coats. Inside hung my army dress blues, clean, pressed, metals aligned, shoes polished to mirror shine. I dressed slowly. No rush, no hesitation, every button closed with muscle memory. Downstairs, the house was already buzzing. Hairstylists, makeup artists, wedding planners rushing in and out. Becca's voice floated over everything bright and commanding. When I walked into the kitchen, one stylist glanced at me, then quickly looked away. No one recognized the basement helper in uniform that belonged on a parade ground. Becca turned. Her smile faltered for a moment. "What are you wearing?" she asked. I poured myself a glass of water. "My formal clothes," I said. She laughed nervously. "You don't need to dress up today. Just stay out of the way. After the signing, we'll head to the ceremony venue." "The signing," I said. "Right." Julian walked in, adjusting his cufflinks. He stopped when he saw me. His eyes narrowed slightly, like he was trying to place a familiar face in a different setting. "You're Becca's sister," he said. "Didn't know you owned a uniform that fancy." "I earned it," I replied. He chuckled. "Well, today's a big day for real professionals. Try not to spill anything this time." Becca touched his arm. "She'll behave." I finished my water, set the glass down, walked out to the driveway. A black car waited. Not for them, for me. The driver opened the door without a word. I got in. No one in the house questioned it. Rich neighborhoods have a way of accepting cars they didn't order. 20 minutes later, I stepped into the Vanguard headquarters through the main entrance this time. Security greeted me by name. Executives nodded as I passed. No mop, no disguise, no invisibility. Upstairs, the boardroom had been prepared for the merger ceremony. 2 long tables, nameplates, microphones, press photographers waiting near the back wall, coffee, water, legal folders arranged with military precision. Sterling Capital's team arrived first, lawyers whispering, assistants carrying briefcases, Julian walking like a man about to be crowned. Becca entered beside him in a white designer dress, not yet her wedding gown, but close enough to signal ambition. She waved at the cameras. Influencer instinct. They took their seats. The room settled. Then the chairman of Vanguard stood. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "we are here to finalize a proposed merger between Vanguard Logistics and Sterling Capital. Before we proceed, our chief executive officer will address the room." Every head turned toward the door behind them. I stepped in, dress blues, metals catching light, shoes striking the marble floor with steady rhythm. For a moment, no one spoke. Becca's mouth opened. Julian stared. One of Sterling's lawyers whispered, "Who is that?" I walked to the head of the table and placed my hand on the chair marked Viper, Chief Executive Officer, Vanguard Logistics. Becca's voice broke the silence. "Security," she shouted. "Get her out, she's unstable." 2 security officers stepped forward, then stopped when the Vanguard chairman raised his hand. "She is exactly where she belongs," he said. I pulled out my ID badge and placed it on the table. The officer stepped back. Julian swallowed. "This is a mistake," he said. "She's Cassidy Hayes," I said, majority shareholder of Vanguard Logistics, and the executive currently deciding whether your company survives. The room shifted, cameras lifted, phones came out. Lawyers sat straighter. Becca's voice trembled. "You're lying," I nodded toward the chairman. He slid a document across the table. Board-certified ownership records, trust transfer confirmation, legal stamps. Becca didn't look at the paper. Julian did. His face drained slowly like someone watching a bank account hit 0 in real time. I took my seat. "Mr. Sterling," I said, "before we discuss your merger proposal, there are matters of compliance I need addressed." I tapped a folder. Inside were audit reports, transaction logs, loan documents, identity fraud records, Email transcripts. Julian's lawyer reached for the folder. I allowed it. He flipped through, faster, faster, then slower, realizing the depth. Julian cleared his throat. These are internal matters, not relevant to... They're relevant, I said, because Vanguard will not absorb criminal liability as part of any merger. Becca stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous, she snapped. She's my sister. She doesn't understand business. She's just doing this for attention. I turned to her. Becca, I said, you opened loans in my name without consent. You laundered funds through your influencer agency. You told lenders I authorized you to control my finances. Her eyes darted to Julian. He didn't look at her. One of Sterling's lawyers leaned in to whisper something to him. Julian's jaw clenched. I continued. And last month you and Mr. Sterling discussed placing me into assisted living against my will to secure financial control. I have recordings of those conversations. Silence. Real silence this time. Not social silence. Not family silence. Legal silence. Julian's lawyer closed the folder carefully. Mr. Sterling, he said we need a private consultation. Julian didn't move, because he knew. The room knew. The cameras knew. This wasn't a merger ceremony anymore. This was a public unmasking. Becca's voice dropped low. Mom and Dad will fix this. I looked at her. They signed contracts selling me out, I said. Those contracts are in that folder too. She sat down slowly. The Vanguard chairman cleared his throat. Mr. Sterling, he said, given these disclosures, Vanguard Logistics is withdrawing from merger discussions immediately. He slid a prepared document forward. Termination of negotiations. Julian stared at it, then at me. You set me up, he said quietly. I kept my tone even. No, you underestimated me. Across the table, Sterling's legal team was already making phone calls. One assistant whispered urgently into her headset. Another typed rapid messages. The cameras kept clicking. Becca sat rigid, hands clenched, watching the life she had imagined flicker and distort in front of her. And I sat at the head of the table, posture straight, voice steady, giving the room no reason to doubt who held authority now. I remained seated while the room tried to decide what reality it now lived in. Julian's lawyer whispered urgently into his ear. Becca stared straight ahead, blinking too fast. Sterling Capital's associates quietly gathered their tablets and phones like soldiers retreating from a battlefield they didn't expect. The Vanguard chairman slid one more document across the table. Mr. Sterling, he said, this is a formal termination of merger proceedings, effective immediately. Julian didn't touch the paper. He looked at me instead. You can't do this, he said. We've invested months into this deal. I kept my voice level. You invested months trying to hide fraud inside someone else's balance sheet. His lawyer